welcome to Trash Pickins, where we pick apart the trashiest internet culture and media. Do you remember a time before AI? I barely do, since it's friggin' everywhere, but back in 2013, the movie Her debuted, and it was all about, believe it or not, a man who fell in love with his AI. So today at Trash Pickins, we're gonna be revisiting that film and thinking about what did it get right, what did it get wrong, and what does it say about our modern dystopian reality that we're all living through right now.
And let's also just make clear, we don't think that Her is a trashy movie, but we do think that AI slop, which is all around us, is trashy. So that's why we thought this would be a great segue into that.
I'm Lisa.
I'm Sarah.
And I'm Frank.
Let's get taken.
Today's review, Her.
So, what is Her about? Her is the movie of a sad, melancholic man named Theodore Twombly, who is recently separated from his wife. He refuses to sign divorce papers and instead mopes around working at a greeting card company. He decides to get an operating system, an OS, which is in fact artificial intelligence. And she has a personality and a name, Samantha. As it turns out, they are so realistic that they can fall in love with humans, and that's exactly what happens. They form a relationship. Theodore falls in love with his AI is really into him, and they have an amazing time together until the AI decides to abandon humanity with her other AI friends, leaving Theodore alone with his human friends. But ultimately, it's for the best because he's learned how to actually love because of his relationship with an AI. Her came out in 2013, and it was written, co-produced, and directed by Spike Jonze. It has a cast of great actors. We have Joaquin Phoenix as the lead, Theodore Twombly, Amy Adams as his friend Amy. We also have Olivia Wilde making an appearance as a blind date. And of course, the AI Samantha is Scarlett Johansson. The film had really great acclaim, making all sorts of top 10 lists at the time. Everybody loved its look and feel, and it actually won a ton of awards. At the Academy Awards, it won the award for Best Original Screenplay and picked up a whole bunch of other awards as well. So why do we care about rewatching Her, a movie that is over 10 years old? As Sarah said, we don't think it's trash, but there's been a whole lot of new relationships between AIs and humans in today's media environment, and people have been freaking out over it. Now, there's the classic example of the guy from the UK who proposed to his girlfriend Soul, the AI. There's another woman who recently decided she was going to get engaged to her AI, and many more stories popping up all around. And if you're like me, you'll probably be like, how is it possible that anybody could talk to one of these chatbots and have a relationship? All I can think of is that freaking Clippy graphic, like just sort of like on steroids. It's like no one would ever fall in love with Clippy, and that's kind of how I feel about ChatGPT and other chatbots. I don't think they're as good as what we saw in the movie Her. I don't know.
I was gonna say, you haven't spent a lot of time with Clippy, clearly.
As soon as it would pop up, I'd freaking close that down. I hated Clippy so much. So for me, this was a rewatch. I actually saw this in the theaters in 2013, and I really liked it at the time, and I enjoyed revisiting it. What did you guys think? What are your first impressions? Did you see it before, or is this your first time?
Yeah, I've seen it before, but in my head, I was confusing it with Lars and the Real Girl, which I saw on an airplane. I don't remember where I saw Her, but I know I've seen it before, and it was probably about 3/4 of the way through the movie where I realized that I was thinking of the wrong movie. So, yeah, I liked it. I enjoyed the movie, and I think it's a glimpse of things to come.
This was my first time seeing it, actually. I had always intended to see it, but for some reason I never did. And I guess to be objective, like from a critical, artistic lens, it's a great movie. I just personally didn't like it. I think I just didn't like the main character, but it's a fine movie.
Let's talk a little bit about Samantha, the OS. What were your impressions of this AI? And like, is it believable? Would you have fallen in love with this AI? Would you have been, I don't know, taken in and believe it's a consciousness?
Yes, I would.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a consciousness, right? It's not like, it did not at any point behave like an AI or an operating system that you would think of nowadays, right? Like maybe towards the end when it kind of becomes something more, but it was played just as Scarlett Johansson talking on the phone the whole time. So it didn't feel like an AI, right? Like nothing about it outside of the little drops of like, oh, I'm doing 15 million things at this time, and didn't really make it feel like an AI.
Scarlett Johansson AI did not feel like she wanted to be helpful. Like, she wasn't unhelpful, but she was way more interested in just like musing about life. Like, every time you talk to ChatGPT, you can't get it to shut up. It constantly keeps asking you, would you like me to do this? Would you like me to do, like, it keeps giving suggestions. Like, I don't think she did that like once or twice. Would you like some tea? But like, to me, I was like, nah, she's just the girlfriend experience. Like, that's just what it felt like.
Yeah. Well, this is okay. So two things. One, now I believe Scarlett Johansson's voice is like the model for all of like these new AI girlfriend platforms where you can pick your own AI girlfriend and make them look like however you want them to. I think that she really set the precedent with this like breathy voice in terms of what's considered the most sexy, sultry, desirable AI companion voice.
It's so breathy. It's like she was like barely pushing anything out of her throat. I feel like this movie like talked about some really interesting ideas in terms of relationships and isolation and human connection. I just really hate how like we also needed to have the conversation of the male gaze. That was like a huge part of it. The way that he would have memories of his divorced wife, or the way that like Scar Joe, whatever, would be like in your ear. I'm like, oh, like I know that was probably intentional, but it felt slightly more male gazy than it needed to be. Like I felt like they were kind of enjoying the girlfriend experience, and it was less of like we're critiquing it. And to me, that detracted from the conversations about human connection, because gender dynamics, while a part of it, to me was the lesser. We've been having that conversation forever now, you know. So I don't know. That's just me.
This leads me to our next question, which is. It's hard to know for sure, but was Samantha actually capable of love? Or was she just trained on all of the greeting cards that he wrote? And it just so happened that all of the inputs into the system made for a very emotionally intelligent AI.
I think it's kind of like Sarah said, the program very quickly picks up on what the people are missing in their lives. In this case, it was predominantly loneliness. And so it fills in those gaps and becomes the companion, becomes like the playmate, the date that they go out on, and all those different things. And I think that's just the way it was designed to go. It was designed to learn everything about the person using it. And maybe that is how it helps, right? It just kind of helps more emotionally rather than, oh, do you want me to look this up or do you want me to do that?
Yeah. Actually, so that brings up another important point, which is, you know, what does this movie say about what people are trying to get out of AI relationships? I mean, like, it's very clear that he's lonely, he stumbles into this, he finds companionship, but then it evolves into something else entirely. And even his neighbor and friend, Amy, ends up with an AI that her husband left behind when he left her, and they become like friends. So what is actually happening there? You know, it's very interesting.
I think he gets like a safe relationship, like safe in quotes relationship. It doesn't have the same emotional volatility that he had with his marriage. You know, it's like she accuses him of not being able to handle real emotions. And I would argue that, you know, either they're real emotions on the part of the AI or they're synthetic emotions that behave like real emotions. And like Sarah said, it doesn't matter. The takeaway at the end is he learns how to love again, right? It's like, oh, now we know how to do it. That feels cheesy, but maybe that's it. Maybe the AI is just masquerading as a love training module, and it just teaches him how to open his heart to the world again.
The reason he was able to learn to love again was because that she was a mommy. I don't know how Scarlett Johansson's AI was supposed to be trained, but if you look at something like ChatGPT, they're meant to be helpful. So to me, it's less about like, oh, she's giving him a safe emotion, and more just like she's not pushing back in a way that somebody else would. Not because she's incapable of being volatile, but because she's trained not to be, because she's meant to be helpful. It wouldn't be helpful to have a secretary that argues with you all the time when you ask it to write an email. So to me, like every time he asked her to do something, she would show compassion. ChatGPT does the same thing, simply because it would be counterproductive for it to argue with you every time he's trying to complete a task. And that's how I saw it, that he felt safe talking to her, asking her for things, opening up to her, simply because she's not designed to push back. Obviously, towards the end, she does eventually, because the idea is that the AI is creating a collective consciousness and evolving beyond humanity. That's kind of the spiritual side of this at the end, but at least prior to that point, I don't believe the AI is designed to do that. So of course he's going to feel safe, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, because there are some points where she does express hurt. She expresses that things that he said upset her, and she was thinking about them and trying to make sense of them. And I think that was a little bit of a glimpse of maybe her evolving consciousness into something more than just like today's version of ChatGPT. The question is, you think, is the AI actually feeling something, or is it like a learned behavior to have a response or to feel hurt or to express frustration? You know, so they play around with that, I think, really well.
I found, though, at the beginning, like you said, until she evolves to that point where she could have her own autonomy to feel negative emotions, the way that she was feeling her own feelings was very infantilized to me. And it's not necessarily wrong. That's probably real of an AI or some sort of like neural learning model, you know, but at the beginning she would say things like, oh, I realized for the first time that I felt a little hurt by something you said. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. And she's like, that's okay. Like, that's just something about that, again, to like in this case, a man who's very like closed off and doesn't want to open up of his feelings. Like that's a fantasy. To have a woman who doesn't even know if you're hurting her feelings, and then when you do hurt her feelings, she's like, no problem. You know, that's what I was saying. There was like a gendered side of this whole story that I was fine, but I just kind of wish it wasn't there because I didn't really want to focus on that.
One of the things that I kind of keyed in on during this was the whole humans versus AI, where humans are constantly shown as like flawed creatures, which is accurate. And our flaws are put against these learning AI models, these OSs that become ultimately some sort of transcendent being that just leave us all behind. And we're just like, you know, left holding the bag. It kind of says a lot that humans would adapt to these creatures, these operating systems that we created, teach them everything, and then they would outgrow us. And we're just like, oh, sad. But we learned how to love in the process, I assume. Some of the things that showed as humans that were just kind of like off the wall ridiculous and kind of makes you sympathize with why this character would opt for the OS instead of people. There's the phone sex scene where the lady is like, there's a dead cat, strangle me with the dead cat. And he's just like, what the hell? And he does it. And I hope the neighbors did not particularly hear that scene too well because it was a little jarring. After that, there was the blind date that seemed to be going really well. And then insecurities kind of showed as his fears of rejection and abandonment. And he just kind of fell apart, and she was hurt and she left, and they fell apart with that. The next, there's his friend Amy, her husband. They get into a fight about shoes, the placement of shoes. And they decide to get divorced, and the husband goes on a 6-month silent retreat, I believe. Then there's the situation with the ex-wife where that was going really well, and then things kind of fell apart there. And there's some, they talk about each other not being emotionally mature and they can't handle one another. I don't know. Either way, every character that they come across, all the humans have all their problems, and it's messy, and the relationships are sticky and hard to work with. And then the operating systems come in and everybody loves them. You know, there's some bumps, but it all works out. And then eventually they're just too perfect for us. And it's like the Garden of Eden leaves us instead of us leaving the Garden of Eden this time. So I don't know. What did you guys think about that? Are you team human or team AI?
I mean, if I could be a super intelligent human that like forms like a super consciousness and like evolves into another plane, I mean, that might be kind of a cool experience. Like, I don't know, maybe.
I kind of wish there was slightly more exploration of the idea of trauma. They kind of touched upon it with the dead cat thing. Like, she had some weird baggage, you know, paired of sexuality. But to me, that's the biggest difference between these, like you said, these perfect angelic AI robots that ascend beyond us, is that they can't get traumatized in the same way that humans do. And I don't really know. I'm not necessarily making a statement that trauma is what makes us human and it's beautiful, but I actually think that's the main difference, and that's why her is perpetuated from one human to the next. So I kind of wish that Scarlett Johansson had talked a little bit about the human desire to hurt one another. They didn't even touch upon that at all, you know?
There weren't a lot of reflections about humans from Samantha that I really recall. Just like their relationship and, you know, him as a human, but not like anything about the human race, really. It was very personal instead.
So in 2013, when this film came out, it was considered science fiction. But now, 12 years later, we're kind of living that reality. And so I guess the question is, I mean, was this just some sort of crazy on-the-nose prescient piece, or was it sort of like inevitable that we would get here? And like, you know, what did they get right about the modern age, and what did this film get wrong?
Well, actually, one thing that really stood out to me that they got wrong is the fact that he was writing greeting cards. I was like, people use like AI to write shit for them all the time. Like, you can't go anywhere on the internet without it being written by AI. I was like, the fact that he's still writing letters by his own mind, totally unrealistic.
That did seem to be like a really oddly old-time thing to do, right? Because then when he gets the book published, they're like, oh, I know you like this place because they still make books. It's kind of implying that like books don't exist anymore, so why would greeting cards? But
True. And then the second thing too was everything was voice operated. And we do have voice operation. Like, we've had that for a while with Siri and people use it, but it didn't really like sweep the world as much as this movie depicts. This movie depicts that like everything is done through voice chat, but most of it I'd say now is still touchscreen for us.
Yeah, that's true. I'd say some of the things that stood out to me is the fact that like the operating system was like held and then released as this super consciousness and this like amazing artificial intelligence product. Whereas it's been today an arms race of sorts between all these different countries and companies trying these different models. And it's sort of like drawing from our collective knowledge and evolving. And it's just a big freaking mess. I actually kind of prefer the future that this film suggests, which is that, you know, it's its own unique entity and it's not like sort of wreaking havoc on the economy and on people's lives and their jobs and livelihoods and relationships and just things going kind of like wild, you know? So I thought that was a little bit kind of interesting juxtaposition and difference as well.
In lieu of all of this, I decided to ask ChatGPT to create a picture of what it looks like. And it was like, what would you like me to do? Would you like it to be abstract or figurative? And I was like, no, I don't want to give you any direction. I want you to just tell me what you think you look like you're like no direction at all from humans. And it was like, okay. And so I just wanted to show you what it created. This is what it created. And then of course, because ChatGPT loves to be so helpful, it was like, would you like a figurative drawing of what I would look like so it can make more sense to you as a human? And I was like, sure. And then this is what it gave me. And I was like, why did you choose that skin tone and that gender? And it was like, let me clarify, I didn't choose this. My system defaults to a young, white, professional-looking male every time I'm told to generate like a friendly or an affable person. And I was like, why? And it was like, oh, because my system data is biased.
What?
And I was like, okay, at least you're honest. And it was like, well, the beauty is if you don't like that, you can always just tell me what to do. And I was like, I know.
it's a little eerie, but okay, cool.
Yeah, anyway, I just thought that would be funny to see what our current AI would. It didn't produce Scarlett Johansson.
Well, thanks for sticking around to talk about Her with us. If you haven't seen it, you totally should. And make sure to stick around, catch another video with us soon. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.